Hello, everyone. Welcome to the You Don't Look Like an Engineer podcast.
Today, we're very excited to invite the entrepreneurial engineer.
He's helping change the perception of engineers and honestly is someone that gives so much back to the community.
Yeah, we haven't spoken to anyone quite like this before, and we're quite excited to share his journey. He started off as a civil engineer and used his passion then for entrepreneurship to move into property development.
He's now focused on elevating the skills of young engineers that want to be more entrepreneurial. I mean, we all want to develop that skill set, so I don't think that this podcast will only benefit engineers with that interest. And without any more spoilers, let's jump straight into it.
Darren, if you don't mind letting our listeners know a little bit about yourself.
Wow. Yeah, I mean, where to start? I guess, really technical drawing at school, that's where it really started. But look, I'm a father of three. I've got three beautiful girls. I live in Sydney. I'm an engineer, pipes, pumps and concrete. That's my background. I work in property development now. I love property. I love, creating spaces and places. I'm very much in the ground. Everything for me is in the ground. I think that's where everything starts, in the ground, particularly in engineering. Yeah, where I started. So technical drawing. I started technical drawing at school, loved technical drawing, loved maths and science. My teacher said I could get into 3-unit maths, which was a blessing later on at uni. And I love maths, hated English, even though I worked really hard on English, but maths was right or wrong, and it didn't matter if you got it wrong, but if you could get there some of the right way, at least you got some marks, which I thought was cool. Nearly went into architecture, industrial design, got into UTS, civil and environmental engineering. Back in the days when there wasn't an ATAR, I think it was an ATAR. I can't remember what it was. Anyway. Yeah, I was living in the Southern Highlands, moved to Sydney, as a young undergraduate engineer, got a job in a cafe, as a dish pick, cleaning dishes for $10 an hour, taking out the trash. I did that while I was at uni full time, just to make money for rent. My rent was $90 a week. Everyone's like, what? $90 a week? Yeah, three bedroom unit in North Sydney for $270 a week. Which is nuts. I think, uni was, 3 bowls of rice every day. That's what I used to eat. You could mix up the sauces. Anyone who went to UTS back in my day would remember that. It was curry at breakfast, beef and black bean at lunch, and then sweet and sour for dinner for $1.30 a bowl. I lived on that for years. Fortunate enough that I actually wanted to I wanted to have a gap year, so I went to Canada for a year and went over and did that at uni. I could speak for about 4 hours, so hopefully I won't bore you. But anyway, look, that's how it all started. And I'm really glad I took a year off mid-uni because it helped me. It actually helped me want to learn. Now I think that was the key. Like I wanted to learn. Before that, I was just sort of cruising through. After that, I became a little bit more analytical about everything. I remember one of my friends at uni had a nap during a lecture and he woke up and I said, hey man, that nap just cost you like $82. And he's like, what? I'm like, yeah, man. So I took your nap and I divided it by the amount of minutes of this course. And then I prorated that based on how much this actual subject costs per year. And that nap just cost you $82. And then he's like, you're a nerd. So that was probably a pivotal turning point early on in my engineering journey. Anyway, lucky enough to be in the right place at the right time, said yes at the right time. And I think sometimes being able to say yes with a caveat, and I always talk about that. I think a lot of people talk about saying no, you should say no, like prioritize and stuff. But I was always big on just being like a yes man. I love that movie. I don't think you have to say yes to everything, but it's how you say yes and what you say yes to. I think that can help define you in your career. Yeah, I'm big on that. I think, I hear what you say about people early on in their career, like what are the things that can shape and guide a career? And those are the things that I'm trying to do right now, separately to my day job.
Darren, I think the most controversial thing you've already said on the podcast, it will be hard to peak, is $270 per week in rent.
Oh, that's nothing. I lived in a share house, and funny enough, I got there and I was paying like $145, I think, for the biggest room in this 5-bedroom Federation house in Crow's Nest.
Listeners cannot recover from this, I don't think.
Yeah, but wait, it gets better. So, because I was on Oz Study, which is like a government assistance thing, and I had to get the total rent for the house. And I know this is not engineering, but I'll tell it anyway. And the guy who was running the house, this guy called Bob, this American guy, he's like, oh, it's $350 for the house. And I'm like, well, hold on a minute. So if it's $350 for the house, it's a 5-bedroom house. I'm paying $145. I know old mate down the hall's paying $120. Joe Blow is paying another $120. I'm like, well, you're paying $5 a week rent? He's like, don't say anything. Do you want to move out to the back room, the sunroom, for $50 a week? I'm like, 25. He's like, 30. I'm like, done. So I did a leaky sunroom for 2 years while I was at uni, and that house ended up getting demolished. It's townhouses now, but yeah, I mean those were the days, like that's just what it was like. You had to work hard to play hard, and I think that's the thing, right? You've just got to be in the moment every chance you can, and make connections with people who are in engineering, because they'll be the ones that can unlock your freedom.
And both these stories, just the one that you talked about, the housing, and you like taking the time to quantify how much this nap costed your friend, really go to show like you already had that numbers entrepreneurial sort of mindset way from the get-go.
Very much like very smart with you, like money as well. Like very you actually paid attention how you spent it.
And I do want to ask you, and I don't know if like we could probably, no, I think it's a good time. We can ask it now.
What's Friday?
We often hear that engineers, do end up making the most successful CEOs, entrepreneurs, and that sort of thing. Why do you think that is?
Yeah, I actually think that, engineers are in a prime position to, I think once an engineer becomes really competent, and I mean competent in whatever they specialize in, they get to probably break down into micro chunks or pieces problems, right? So it's all about problems and solving problems. And I think engineers have a knack with being able to take a problem, break it down into little pieces and solve it in little pieces, and then stack it all back up together and then be able to go forth with that particular solution. I also think that, you hit the nail on the head about entrepreneurial mindset. If an engineer can be creative, I think that's when they start to break the mold. Things like value engineering, design thinking, like I'm big on design thinking. I mean, I think they're the things that are going to change our industry. And I'm really, really passionate about that. I've seen premiers, astronauts, there's CEOs who are engineers, and they're not practicing engineering, but their mind is one of an engineer. And I think it's really hard because you see younger people say, I want to be an engineer, I want to be an engineer. But, and I talk about it's not just about maths and science and STEM, it's about being able to communicate complex ideas and problems to people who may make decisions for you to be able to solve them.
If you could elaborate for the listeners who might not know, what do you mean by design thinking?
Yeah, so look, you can Google it. I'm not going to give you the word by word definition, but the way I think about it is design thinking is about looking at a problem in a different way. It's almost like a root cause analysis. It's almost like the 5 whys. It's almost like looking at a design or whatever it is and thinking, is this the most appropriate design for this outcome? does it tick from, time, cost, quality, stakeholder, community, ESG, environment, sustainability? Is this the most beneficial use of time, resources, energy, or trying to change the outcome? I think it's more around challenging the status quo and saying, is the standard the right thing to do? Are we over designing this? Do we need to make this concrete member this thick, or is this going to be the best outcome, for the local environment? So I'm sure there's probably some more detailed definition, but that's just my long-winded version.
Yeah, thank you though, still, and we'll go and Google it.
Yeah, I'm going to go Google it now, because now I'm thinking.
Sure.
But in essence, it sounds like just breaking down problems into like what they call a first principles analysis, break it down to its root minimum and build up from there.
Yeah, I think, I worked with Sydney Water for a long time, and I think that's probably helped because I was constantly working with the operators and the maintainers and the network people who would always say, how am I going to maintain this valve? Or, how can I turn this? How can I press that button? And I think if you're just thinking about the end user in mind, then you can only perform a design that's going to have the user who is going to be the one actually, using whatever it is that you're designing and creating.
Interesting, because you have always had that mindset, even when you were saying that you wanted to do like industrial engineering and all of that. And I came across your LinkedIn page, as you know, and I did see that you are in the mission to help engineers to be more entrepreneurial. I hear the word is so difficult to pronounce for a Latina.
Yes, it is. I like
anyway.
Pronounce.
When did you realize that engineers needed help with that? Because it's interesting how that term that we hate to pronounce, it's a very business linked. And I do feel that engineers and businessmen, I don't know, there's, that line that is like, no, they don't really get along. Or it's not that they don't get along, actually. I should rephrase that. It's just that they are very different, and they, usually they focus on the technical aspect and not the business oriented part.
Yeah. Look, it's funny because I think that engineers often go two ways in their career, right? You go technical, engineer, or you go like project manager, director, business operating manager, right? And there's sort of this whole mindset about there's only two paths. You can go, there's a fork in the road, right? What do you want to do? Do you want to be more technical? Do you want to be a manager? And the whole idea of the entrepreneurial engineer is you can just merge the two. And you can just you can be competent and technical, but you can also have the managerial or the director role. I think it's probably about where you can find yourself in your career. And entrepreneurial in my mind, doesn't mean like businessman or whatever. I think there's probably like a stigma around that term. The way I'm looking at it more so is that I think that it's very complementary. Because if a businessman and an engineer, a businesswoman and an engineer work together, their skill sets are so complementary. I could turn around to a businesswoman and say, I'm going to save you $20 million with my design. And they're going to go, well, get on board because I want to save $20 million. The thing that engineers don't do is, all right, I'll save you 20 million, but why don't you give me half? No one does that.
That's true. Yeah.
No one does that. And that's, it's something I've always tried to push throughout my career is like engineers need to be more focused on, it's not just, hey, here's my great design. Bye. It should be, here's my great design. And how about you share the value? Because value creation is usually done by the engineer, maybe not so much by the entrepreneur, but, I guess a little bit of both. So I guess I'm trying to break that down. And sorry to ramble. But the only other thing is that it's also about like, soft skills and management skills, and I call them power skills. I think that's really important because I have throughout my career seen where a lot of younger engineers, maybe not as competent, want to be more confident, but they're not they don't really want to put themselves out there. And I want to make sure that people know it's okay to make mistakes and fail. That's how you're going to learn the most.
Yeah, I love that mindset. It's amazing because we live in a society that is stigmatized making mistakes. So it's great. And I do like the fact that, you know, I guess, it's a very creative mindset, the one that you want to embrace in the industry. And I think we do need a lot of that and, you know, just a little bit more flexibility. You mentioned earlier that you took a gap year and you went to Canada.
Yeah.
Why? Why did you take a gap year? And what was the best learning out of that?
Yeah, so there was an idea that was just broached by my girlfriend at the time. She wanted to go. I made a decision that if I passed fluid mechanics and soil mechanics that I could go. And I did.
Treat yourself. Those are hard subjects.
Yeah.
Yes.
And I took the first, 3 months off and worked like 4 jobs to save up the money.
Wow.
And ended up going there. And yeah, it was, I didn't know if I wanted to be an engineer at that time. And I thought this is a great way just to go take some time off.
I mean, after fluid mechanics, who would like to be an engineer?
Seeing those people rock up, the students rock up to the exam with like a trolley full of books.
Wow.
And I've got my one book and I'm like, oh, I'm never going to know the answers. I thought it was a bit daunting, but yeah, look, I lived on Blackcomb Mountain in Whistler. I used to have to snowboard to work. Yeah, it was amazing, right? And, I was very lucky because it was only by the people that I knew that I ended up getting the job that I got and just landing into this role. And it just made me realize the power of my network and the people I knew, which was probably the founding part of that trip and experience. And yeah, as I said, it made me like, I came back to Australia and I know I sort of talked down to myself, but I also was like, my brain was like, I was, out partying all the time and whatever. And then I was like, I really want to learn. And fortunately I went to the Dean of Engineering and I said, so I want to be an environmental lawyer. And he's like, yeah, you could do that. He goes, so when you're standing up in court, you're going to talk all this law jargon and then you're going to go to an engineer to ask them the actual answers, the real part of the response. I'm like, oh yeah, that's right. He goes, so do you want to be the guy just reciting like, the law, or do you want to be like the technical guru that knows their stuff and like everyone's like listening to because it's so, important part of the case? And I'm like, yeah, I want to be that technical person. And I sort of just launched back into engineering with a, with a quite a big trust. So yeah, it was good. Yeah, it made me realize that's what I wanted to do. And it was probably a blessing in disguise, to be honest.
I do have to ask you, because you talked about this before as well, and it's a common theme between your journey is knowing what to say yes to.
Yeah.
And I think it's constantly, many of the listeners are probably on these crossroads as well, but as someone progresses through their journey, their career or anything in life, you're constantly at a crossroads where you're trying to weigh the two options. And honestly, either option can take you on a very different trajectory. How do you personally weigh in where you could be? And with, like, say, if you could have taken a whole engineering career, that would have ended up a completely different life, but you decided to do the property side of things. Like, how do you weigh the two options in life and how do you make a decision?
Or are you doing them both, like you said earlier? You don't have to choose.
I sort of do heaps of different things. I know I'm trying to be an ambassador for a charity at the moment, which is also fun, but I think it's about putting yourself in the situation to actually have the opportunities. I talk about it being like apples falling from a tree. Some apples just sort of land in your lap and you're like, oh my God, this is amazing and I should do this. Some you've got to reach up and keep reaching to try and grab them, right? So you can get the apple. And then there's others you see and you can see them falling and you're like, you know what? I'm just going to let that one fall to the ground and let someone else pick it up. And I was in positions early in my career where my boss at GHD, tier one, great company. I loved it there, but I think I was there for 3 weeks and he walks up to my desk. He's like, "Oh, have you got a car?" I'm like, "No." He's like, "Oh, well, you better go buy one because you're going out to Rouse Hill, which is like an hour, or at that time it was probably like a good 45-minute drive away." He's like, "You're going to work out there now?" And I'm like, "Okay."
Yeah.
I went and bought like a $1,500 car and I just started working out, on a big, water, a water project out in Western Sydney. I could have easily just said no, but I just went, yeah, I'll go do that. I think, you're right. It's hard to know, but I don't think you'll ever know. You'll never know. I think you've just got to be yourself in the moment. And like I always think you should just say yes. You should just say yes with a caveat. The caveat is key. I don't know, a lot of listeners are into caveats. I am. Because when someone says to me, "What's the number?" I'm like, "Oh, it's 900K. 900K, that's the number." And they're like, "Oh," and I said, "Oh, but that might not allow for this, this, and this." So the answer's there, but the caveat is something I can rely on. Now, I'm not saying I'm flaky or floozy. I'm just saying that if I have a level of confidence to have an answer in a certain way, like an opportunity, I'll be like, "Yes, I will do that for you, but I want it on my terms." Or, "Yes, I'll take that opportunity out west, but how about a pay rise?" Not that I asked for one. I mean, it should have been a good idea. But anyway, where I'm going is I think you should just try and say yes to everything that comes your way, because it might be the time that you say no, which is fine, or you might say yes and then they might say no. And then you never had a yes in the first place. So you're never going to know unless you try. And I think that's what, I try to preach to young engineers, because all the opportunities are out there for you to get. You just got to grind to get them, right?
Yeah. Very solid advice, I think, especially with changing landscape, just so many innovative things happening in this industry. I think anyone can benefit from, hearing this sort of thing, that do say yes to all the things that come your way and see where they can take you.
The amount of people like DM me on LinkedIn, like, it's crazy, right? And I think that's part of the entrepreneurial engineer, is to be like, how can I help these people get jobs and try and navigate their way? Because that's the thing. There's so many opportunities out there.
And even just leveraging on your network, you talked about that as well. I find oftentimes, sometimes engineers struggle a little bit with that. Again, do you have a why or even advice on how, to get out of that and be able to, pull those strings of your network a little bit better?
Oh, 100%. Yeah, I mean, everyone goes on about, your networks, your net worth, blah, 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 whatever. Yeah, I mean, I'm all about the speed dial, right? So if you're fortunate enough to have 3 pages of speed dial, like on your phone, I used to play speed dial roulette when I was like a heavy consultant. I just have like 3 pages of just every different person I knew, clients, consultants, whoever, right? And every moment I had in the car, walking from the office, whatever, I'd just go, bing, and I'd ring someone. "Hey, how you going? What's happening? What's happening in your world?" Ask a ton of questions. "Yeah, cool. Hey, yeah, let's catch up a coffee." "Oh, no, too busy." "Yeah, sweet," right? And I just keep doing it and doing it and doing it.
Right.
I always say that if you want to build a business, you have to have 300 coffees. So I heard that from someone a long time ago. I love coffee, so that helps. But yeah, 300 coffees. And I think you need to ring people just because, you don't have to ring someone for advice all the time. You don't ring someone to want something. You ring them to tell them a story, or ask about their daughter or their son or whatever. Because you'll tend to find, if you're front of mind, they'll ring you and say, "Hey, I've got a problem. I need this." Or I think the other thing, like, I think in one day I had, one person ring me up for an architect for their house. Someone else ring me up for a materials specialist for a court case they had. And then someone else I can't remember. But if you can connect your network together, you become super powerful. And that's that's the bit that's going to get you leverage with your network. Is when people start calling you because you're the go-to, that's when you know that you're making like synapses and connections within the industry that probably wouldn't have been there before. And you're solving problems only by just saying, hey, here's a few phone numbers to ring. Like, that's going to be the best thing.
It's crazy how it works. And it's, I like the fact that you are emphasizing how, you know, it's not about asking for advice or not calling with a problem. It's just like asking them about their life, or you even sharing something, because at the end of the day, like
it's very human.
Yeah. And we are all like social creatures. Like we all, you know, enjoy chatting about something, or we all want company sort of thing. Like, you know, you just want to hear something. So it's
and really... I'll be very honest, like some of the, I'm just trying to think of like this pattern, and some of the most well-connected or successful quote unquote people that I can think of, at least in my circle, this is a norm for them. Like they literally do, just randomly call and message and be like, let's catch up. What are you doing? What's happening in your life? Or like, that's it, just for that purpose. And then they are front of mind. So, they clued onto this a very long time ago.
And it's like,
if you're going to approach someone on LinkedIn, don't just say like, hey, got any jobs or whatever, help me find a job. Why don't you start with like your biggest challenge? Or say like, hey, I'm really struggling with this. I'd really appreciate your advice. You know, or I'd really love to know, like, what do you know about water, or what do you know about bridges? I mean, I don't know much about bridges, but you know what I mean? Like, if you're going to hit up a network that you've never met, or you're trying out LinkedIn, come with a fresh angle. Like, get that person going, oh, wow. Like, they've read my bio, or they've read my background, or they're asking me something that's not just like, hey, here's my CV. Do you know anyone I can get a job, right? Because that's going to garner some interest. And that's, you know, like you said, people want to talk about life, and, you know, I love talking about engineering. Like my wife can't stand it half the time, but I'm banging on about, you know, pipes and the other project we did the other day. So
Oh yeah. I do think it's a good way. Like whenever you, and this is for the listeners, I guess, whenever you want to, you know, start in a new role or do something different, you just got to reach out to the person that is already doing it and getting their insights, because that's like a good way of learning what it takes or how they've done it, but also just to position yourself. And as you said, be front of mind. Like you never know, they might need someone, and that then they might think of you.
Yeah,
how can I help? Yeah.
And speaking of help, good choice of word. You mentioned you are on a charity, a board of a charity at the moment,
but for a charity.
An ambassador for a charity. You are also, we came across some research when we were doing on what you've done. We saw that you were doing some volunteering in Vietnam as well. Where do you think your passion for philanthropy comes from? And just tell us more about this journey. What have you been up to in the world of philanthropy?
Wow, philanthropy. That's a big word. I mean, I'll probably start with Vietnam because that's the segue to Hope in a Suitcase, which I'll talk about in a minute. Buying that car that I mentioned before gave me the opportunity to go to Vietnam as a volunteer. The Australian Youth Ambassador for Development Volunteer Program places 18 to 30-year-olds in the Asia Pacific region for paid volunteering gigs, basically working on infrastructure and development projects. You should look it up. I recommend it to anyone. It's still around. It's an amazing program. I did that through GHD, and I was fortunate enough to go there after 8 months of being a community infrastructure engineer. The engineering manager's like, hey, do you want to take over one of these towns in the Mekong Delta and be a construction advisor? I'm like, yeah, of course I do. You know, I was, single, didn't have any kids or whatever. And I'm like, yep. And then literally it was like 4 years later and I'm leaving that place. So I lived in a little town called Bac Lieu, learned Vietnamese. I still dream in Vietnamese sometimes, which is weird. Built like $40 million worth of infrastructure, stormwater pump stations, stormwater pipes, We did toilets for like kids and families and houses. We did little micro infrastructure projects, built 3 water treatment plants, and did a ton of infrastructure. And I mean, I had 2 translators and a driver. It was one of the most amazing experiences in my life, and it changed me as a person and a human and an engineer. I was really, really lucky to have the most amazing engineering mind as my mentor that I've ever met in my life. This guy could do calculations on the back of an envelope in feet and square inches, and then translate them into metric in his head. And then you see some guy on a computer like, and he's like, "Oh, yeah, you missed the like 0.11 sort of thing." So that was amazing. So I mean, look, that experience like shaped me. Vietnam is a very special place, and the people are unbelievable. I mean, that was an amazing experience. And I think I tried to do some charity work over there. I used to give away a ton of rice every week. We used to do charity work. I tried to set up a foundation, but it failed for a bunch of reasons that were sort of outside of my control. Pretty hard setting up an NGO in a developing country. Which is still on the agenda. I like to say it is. Hopefully one day. The Hai Lua Foundation, which is it's a Vietnamese slang word for country bumpkin. It's anyway. So I think that I sort of didn't have much when I was young, and then living in absolute poverty there, and seeing the poverty and seeing what sanitation meant to a town that had nothing, and watching that town change. It was only about 150,000 people. Was pretty cool. And then, I think, I think that's sort of always what I always wanted to do, more charity work. And, I mean, donating here and there and doing the Gold Ride. I don't know if you know about the Gold Ride, or, all the, other charities you can do every single month. I sort of do those here and there. And then, Open a Suitcase came along. So, decided that I wanted to support a charity, and, Open a Suitcase was one that really, really touched me. It's for kids going into out-of-home care, and it gives them a suitcase with, toys and clothes and, sanitary items for young girls, and, toiletries and whatever. Just something they can call their own when they go into foster care or out-of-home care. So I was in out-of-home care when I was a kid. I was pretty lucky because my dad came and got me after nearly a year. That doesn't happen for some kids. So I sort of knew. I've been donating to them for a long time. Rachel Clancy is the founder, and just trying to do more there. Just the other week, I spoke in front of like 800 students, 800 female students at a school, which was pretty daunting, but also really valuable. And it's just something else to do with your life, right? Just something else you can give back and do for someone else. And I mean, hopefully there'll be more things. Just how much can you fit in a day?
Yeah, that's right.
It's such a nice thing to do, and you put it so casually, just saying that it's just something else you can do with your time. No, it's really, it's not small. In any way, if you don't mind my asking, your message to the 800 young students, what did you want to impart?
Mm-hmm. I wanted to try and remove the stigma around kids that go into out-of-home care or foster care. Try and get them to understand that there's nothing wrong with that, and that you can, end up growing up to be a successful human being. It doesn't define you. And also for them to raise lots of money. So that was also good. But they were doing like a fundraising charity drive. So that was obviously part of it. But, just to really try and break down the stigma, really. That was probably my clear message to try and get through to them.
Oh, we are all about
That is
breaking
incredible.
stigmas. So
Yeah, well, you are.
definitely, yeah.
You are indeed. Engineers are boring.
That's right. We are not.
I'd say the 36 minutes of this podcast have shown that we're not.
It's just so impressive though. It's so important to, I like the message that you have just share with them. Like, it doesn't define you, like your background or like the situations that you go through, you're more than that. So it's really empowering, and yeah, congratulations for doing that. Like, that's incredible. And don't sell yourself short. Like, it's impressive the way that you're doing that. You did mention something about mentors, and we do want to ask you, if you were to give yourself advice, like your younger self, like about how to make the most out of the conversations that you have with your mentors, what would you say to yourself?
Yeah, I mean, mentors are everywhere, you know, like you guys are mentoring me right now. Just by virtue of me, like with the words coming out of my mouth and you asking me questions makes me reflect on myself, right? That's mentoring 101. Finding a good mentor that cares, that's the trick, I think. You know, if you can find someone who cares, just like leech onto them and go for the longest ride that you possibly can. Find mentors everywhere. Mentors don't have to be engineers. They can be, you know, property development people. They can be accountants, doctors. They can be anyone. Find people who can mentor you outside your professional life. You know, personal life mentors can, you know, accelerate your career in other ways you'd never imagine possible. I think I was very lucky. You know, I had in various parts good mentors, but I would help them too. You know, I think that's the one thing. Like, a mentorship isn't just a one-way train. You've got to make sure that you've got to give back something to them, you know, and I think that's key. You know, it's not just showing interest in their life, but how can you help them? What can you do for them? And yeah, find mentors everywhere. You know, I think there's a lot of different mentors. I think personality is really important. You know, being able to get along with someone, you got to get along with someone. And just listening to, like, being curious, asking questions and listening, you know, that's a big part of it. But as I said, I feel like I was lucky enough to have the right mentors at the right time. And I think that's key, because what you need will change throughout your career. Early on, you might need a technical mentor, and then you might go through some personal stuff and you need a personal mentor. And then, you know, you might land yourself in another job, and that might be different role description. And then you might find a mentor that doesn't even work in your department, but then they might give you the guidance to have an influence over someone else that might put you in a position that could bring you another opportunity. So it sort of goes back to my saying yes thing. Like, you know, I would treat everyone like a mentor. It's the ones who care are going to be the ones that are going to give you that leverage.
Mm-hmm.
Very wise. And thank you so much for calling us mentors as well. Yeah. That was really beautiful. And we are trying to make the most out of this for you, and help you reflect as well, and us learning and absorbing everything from your journey. You've been mentioning that you now are in property development and investing. So I guess, how was that transition into, you know, development, and from having the background of water and pumps and concrete? How did you manage to get there?
Yeah, so from going from big infrastructure projects to development was a major shift. I was just fortunate enough. Again, one of my networks mentioned to a developer that they had a problem with a water pipe. You know, I came up with a solution, saved them a bucket of money. They said, "Oh, can we do some project management? You know, can you project manage a signalized intersection?" I'm like, "Yeah, man, I can project manage anything." I think that's the engineer mindset, right? Like, you're a project manager at heart. You know, we learned it at uni. It's not hard. You just do your program, you put a cost together and you go and build it, right? It's not rocket science. And I'd never done it in section before. So I was like, all right, yeah. You know, we got 1, 2, 4, 5, 6, 35 projects, you know, across a 400 hectare site. And you're realizing that all you're really doing, and I hate to break it down, but, you know, from someone who you go from building like complex infrastructure, you're just building roads and drainage and flat pieces of dirt so someone can build a house on. Like if you break it down to its simplest form, that's all it really is. So it started out just doing project management, a lot of number crunching, a lot of Excel, a lot of just project management stuff, really. I mean, that's all that really comes down to it. And then started getting more insights into feasibilities and due diligence and acquisitions, or, you know, looking at the risks. Like, you know, engineering, it's all about risk. You know, you look at a piece of dirt and you go, oh, what's about the contamination? What about the indigenous heritage? What about the utilities? You know, what about the landform? Is it going to cost a lot to do bulk earthwork? What about flooding? What about drainage? Like, these are all things that you already knew about being an engineer, right? And I think I was lucky to be a water engineer and sort of had, you know, always been a big fan of water. And then, I mean, one thing led to another. You know, you start working on rezonings and DAs and apartment sites and then land sites and doing due diligence for a bunch of different developers. So I understand, you know, the lingo and what the metrics are and about profit on costs and IRRs, and did a bit of training and whatever. And yeah, one of my best clients, and I can say that because I say it pretty proudly, was my current employer. They were my best client by far, as a consultant. And, I mean, I said one day, like, how about it? And they're like, nah, you're not ready. I was like, yeah, sweet. I'll openly say it. I don't care.
Yeah.
And then, 3 years later, they're just like, oh, hey, do you want a job? And I'm like, yeah, sure, 100%. And, it's the best company I've ever worked for, hands down. Yeah, they're an amazing business led by amazing people and amazing mentors. And yeah, I'm so fortunate to work for that business and, everything it's given me. So yeah, I can say that pretty proudly, openly. I hope you're listening.
Yeah. You will hear it. They will listen.
Yeah, that's what they but I can say it pretty proudly. So yeah, I'm very lucky. So, but I think, you know, it wouldn't have been for saying yes to that opportunity, or in my mind, providing the value engineering. You know, the value engineering is everything. And that's a big part of my role, is value engineering. You know, it's not just about project management. It's about breaking something down, taking out the risk and removing the price, or removing the spend, or increasing the profit. I mean, that's what engineers do, or what we should be doing. It shouldn't just be like a cookie cutter. What do we do on the last project? You know, that's anyone can do that.
I absolutely love that you talked about, you know, having thick skin, because you said you just ask the question. It's okay if you face rejection. If they say, yeah, you're not ready at the moment, it's fine. Honestly, like, how would you advise people to build that up? Because I think it's just so important, especially for engineers wanting to be more entrepreneurial and just in general.
Oh, you mean build up a thick skin?
Yeah. And have the courage to keep asking.
Yeah. I mean, I've got a few different takes on that, but I'll try and do the PC version.
No, go for everything.
No, it's sort of embarrassing, but I don't know. I think, you know, being a numbers person, it's all about the percentages, right? Mm-hmm. So, you know, if you're going to go for a job, right? You're going to go for a job, they say no, right? You got 10 interviews, right? So that's 10%, right? And then you get 2 interviews, 3 interviews, 4 interviews, or whatever it is, or you try and you try and you try. It's all about a percentage. So your success rate will only ever be a percentage of the amount of times that you tried. So there's always a percentage. There's always a percentage number that means that, you know what, someone said no, go to someone else. Or they might say no. And then they might say yes. And then you go, no, actually, no. So for me, it's all about percentages. And I think if you can try and frame your mindset in that way, then you'll just keep trying until you get what you want.
God, that's mind blowing. I am.
The numbers do not lie.
True,
Yeah.
Well, I just keep trying, people.
Yeah, I think a lot of people get knocked down, right? And I get that, right? And look, I'm a hard on my sleeve guy. You know, I'm out there. You know, I don't really care, and I do that a lot because that vulnerability would be the only way that I'll be honest with myself. But
Beautiful.
you're right. You know, there is that whole, like, how can you handle rejection? And the only way you can is just roll up your sleeves and give it another crack.
Yeah, I love that. And as you said earlier, like, there's things that shouldn't really define us. And one of those things is when we get rejected by people, by opportunities, by companies. So I love that. And it's a good message to spread.
I am curious, have you always been this transparent to be authentic to yourself? Because like you said, it's the best way for you to be truest to yourself. Or is it built over time?
Or did you face anything in particular?
Yeah, something in particular that made you this way.
You I have to be this way.
Yeah, so, look, you know, I mean, you know, my childhood, you know, I was, as I said, in sort of like out of home care for a while. I lost my parents when I was pretty young.
So sorry.
And yeah, I think you just sort of realize that, you know, you're only at this time and place for a certain amount of time, and you just got to give it a red hot crack. And, you know, if you're blunt, you're blunt. If you're honest, you're honest. You've just got to put yourself out there. Otherwise it will fly by, right? I think that whole, you know, was I always like that? Yeah, I've always been pretty out there, pretty happy-go-lucky. Like, I think that's just a personality trait, right? But I think you can self-promote that, because I find that it's, and I think I might have written this once, maybe I haven't, but it's always what wasn't said that you'll always go back on and regret.
So true.
Because if you said it and you go, oh man, I really regret saying that, then you're like, hold on, but if I was honest with myself, then I shouldn't. There's always that thing that you didn't say. And I always find in meetings too, you know, someone's like, oh, hey, I was going to say this in this meeting. Oh, you really should have, because that might have changed the course of history, or that might have changed a decision. Hopefully I'm not getting too whimsical, but yeah, you know what I mean. I think that's
absolutely. There's even research on that, like about how we regret most of the time that what we regret on is like the things that we didn't do more than the things that we have done. So 100%. Yeah. Brené Brown, for anyone listening, and if you want to go and check the research, go for it.
Yeah, but no thick skin. I'm super, like, you know, I take heaps of things to heart. You know, shoot from the hip. You know, I'm always, that's just who I am. I'm an expressive behavioral style. That's just what I am.
Beautiful. Well, just to finalize, we'll ask you a question about, what are you looking forward to the most this year? Is there anything in particular?
Oh, well, yeah, I mean, tomorrow. Yeah, this year's huge. You know, it's a massive year. I feel like it's a culmination of a few things and ideas and thoughts and processes. Definitely want to try and, you know, continue to deliver, more value, you know, not just, you know, to, you know, the work that I do, but also the people I work with. I think you go through like transitions in your life and career. And I think when you know that you have something on the horizon, it's important just to be in doing mode, not planning mode. Because I think a lot of time people are always planning. What am I planning? And I feel like I'm just in this whole, just the now, about just being and doing, and not really thinking so much about what's happening in 6 months. We're looking forward to my kids growing up, and just hopefully, you know, openly, just getting more traction with the entrepreneurial engineer, which is my little pet project, and just seeing what happens with that.
Is there any links that we can share on like the episode description for the entrepreneurial engineer?
My LinkedIn page. It's funny because I was going to try and share a link with you guys and to your listeners with like a cool backlink, you know, / you don't look like an engineer. but I didn't figure out WordPress in time. So
Oh,
just
great.
go to my
Okay.
LinkedIn profile and you can subscribe there. I've got a little free mini course coming up about productivity and
Very cool.
other stuff coming out. So it just, as with everything, it takes time.
Mm.
I'm learning, right? Like I'm learning about, funnels and convert kits and all these different online things, you guys using your podcast, which is amazing, by the way. Well done.
Thank you. Thank
Really
you.
proud of you guys. It's a great thing you're doing. So keep it up.
Thank you so much for your time, and it has been one of my most favorite conversations. I will say that. I do think we need more people like you in the industry who do wear their heart on their sleeve, and even you can be a doer and still be quite emotionally invested in what you do. So thank you.
Thanks so much. I was super looking forward to this, and I could talk for hours. So talk to any of my friends and network. They already know that.
No, thank you so much, and also for showing us that you don't really have to choose between leading and managing, leading and technical, because it's a blend, and I really appreciate that out of the conversation that we had. I think it's going to be of value for a lot of our listeners. Thank you so much again for your time.
Anytime.
Yeah.